News Radio 700 WLW.
Back with Eddie and Rocky. And Rock, we've talked about this many, many times about working from home, and before the employees seem to have the ball. It was like, look, we're not coming back in. We have learned how to work from home, and we actually like it a lot.
We like it a lot. And, by the way, you're desperately looking for workers. So if you want to go ahead and get rid of me, best of luck to you. Yeah, so a lot of the power was held in the employee. But now, I guess, as things get back to normal, and then there's, and jobs are more and more available, you wonder, is that starting to switch back to the employer now? And now I think a lot of them are saying, you know what, we kind of want you back in the building.
And that's what's happening. There's pushback from employers on the employees. And also, I read an article the other day that said, look, if you want to work from home, okay, then take whatever, 10, 15% less on your paycheck. If you're not going to be in here and you're going to work from home, then you don't deserve as much money. Now, where does
That's about the portion where I go, you know what?
Correct.
Coming in.
But let's talk to our workplace expert about it. Joel Patterson, always a pleasure. He heads up the Vested Group, and Joel, we've talked many times about this type of thing, but what's going on here? When does this all end? What's the end game of all of this?
Well, it's unfortunately turned into a kind of a big game of chicken, it feels like these days, because every time you turn around, another large corporation is telling their employees, you must come in, and then people don't do it, and then where do you go, right? There's no real consequence for not doing it, and they recognize that, and that's what's happening at Apple. Specifically, a group of people put together a video and said that we don't agree with this plan and that it's not in the best interest of the organization. But meanwhile, the plan that they were endorsing, or that Apple is asking, is that they're already working 2 days a week in the office. All they did was say that they want them to come in a third day that is based on what their manager tells them to do. So it wasn't even that big of a change, and it creates this much of a pushback. It just continues to show what a weird cycle we're in. You mentioned the labor shortage. I mean, the reason there's no consequences a lot of this stuff, a lot of the time, because there's nowhere else to go, and,
right.
And it really puts people in a tough spot.
Right. So, look, I am on record saying I'm a results-driven guy. If you can, whatever, go to happy hour at 4 and stay home and do all that, and you're cranking out work left and right, then by all means do it. But my sense is CEOs and companies are saying, look, all of you aren't near as efficient at home as you are back in the workplace. So that's why they want people back. But I've also heard that this is like an archaic way, and it's kind of like a control thing. So which is it? Are CEOs saying, is it more in your opinion that CEOs are just kind of used to the old way and we want you back here so I can micromanage you? Or is it that people are just flat aren't getting enough work done?
There's certainly some of that. I mean, there's some old school stuff going on, but I think that's on the low side. As I'm with you, I feel like if you manage people to expectations, to whatever they're supposed to deliver, that's how you get the most out of them. And I don't think that the productivity piece is really what people are worried about. It's the stuff that you can't put your finger on. It's especially a company like Apple. I'll go back to them, that is very creativity focused. Getting people in the same room, allowing them to have a conversation, to come up with new ideas. It's tough to replace that.
And how do you replace that, Joel? We're talking to Joel Patterson. How do you replace something like that in this type of environment? Is that the reason for the pushback? I'm guessing, right? I mean, you can't do that over Zoom. I'm sorry. I mean,
there's zero chemistry over Zoom.
Correct. On Zoom, I mean, skin to skin, for lack of a better way to put it, skin to skin contact in the same room means a lot. You get a vibe going, you're talking, you're sharing ideas. Over video, you're petting your dog, you're drinking coffee, you're not paying attention, halfway attention to what's going on around you.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Nobody has quite figured out how we replace that. That's the issue. I mean, you think about starting a meeting when you're face to face with somebody. You spend the first couple of minutes just kind of getting to know them, seeing how they're feeling. Do they look like they're doing okay? Maybe it was a Monday. How was your weekend? You don't get any of that, and you don't really get an insight to what's going on in that person's world. And we haven't solved it. I mean, there's tools out there. There's AI, quote unquote, that's supposed to be able to detect emotions from people on these calls, but really want to trust that. There's lots of things out there, but it's an issue that hasn't been solved, but isn't going away. We have to figure out a way to be able to continue to grow as an organization, and a lot of times that means having people in the same room.
Joe, I remember distinctly going like in early 2020 when all hell was breaking loose and no one can get together, world's shutting down. I remember trying this thing called Zoom, and it was me, my wife at our house, my sister and her husband at their house, and my parents at their house. And like, we're going to try and get the grandkids on, and it was miserable because you can't feel over Zoom. You can't feel when the next person is getting ready to talk, or in person, you can kind of say, okay, Eddie's getting ready to say something here. So you can't feel any of that. So I feel like that's where a lot of the creativity and the dialogue just gets lost because it can be frustrating. It really can when it's done over the internet.
It's incredibly annoying having to deal with that. And the other thing that people don't think about is when you're in a meeting face to face with somebody, you don't sit 2 feet across from them and stare at them. And that's exactly what happens when you're on Zoom. And they're staring back at you, and that's kind of what makes it uncomfortable, and really is what creates that kind of Zoom fatigue we've talked about. But right. We'll keep trying.
Well, and a lot of people, I mean, I think we all know, a lot of people don't even like you're taking a video of the old home movie thing. Remember, you'd try to take a home movie, or mom or grandma or your aunt or uncle, whatever the case might be, and they'd be going, oh, no, I don't want to be on camera. There you are, like you're saying, that camera is looking you square in the eye, and you're like, you're trying to look at it, but after a while, I suppose you just don't pay attention to it. But it really is discomforting for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I feel like I get balder every call that I have, and so you just end up focusing on your own what you consider deficiencies and things, and that's part of the problem. It's just not real, and I think that goes back to the piece that we're missing, those kind of interpersonal relationships, and it's important for companies to find reasons to get people to come into the office, create some FOMO for them. And hopefully that will have the impact that you want and get them in the same room.
So Joel, how do you see this playing out? Who wins in this? My sense is that people have gotten used to and like the idea of staying at home and doing some work. I think if it goes to a situation where companies say you got to come back in full time. I don't know how that works, but I see that it's sticking around. Who wins in this, in your opinion?
Well, it's crazy to even predict something like that because you think about all the people who don't even have an option, right? I mean, there's lots of people who don't get that. But for those that do, I still think we're going to end up in a hybrid kind of situation. 2 or 3 days a week seems pretty normal for most companies now. People are getting used to that. I don't see where we go to everybody being remote, everybody all the time. I'd be more interested in really exploring things like a 4-day work week, where it's a 4 days, 8 hours a day, 32-hour work week, and see what we could do with that rather than try to really force some compliance around how many days you have in the office. But, the big companies drive a lot of this. So Apple, Amazon, how those companies respond and what their employees ultimately do will probably drive a lot of the behavior in the long run.
All right, with that, Joel, you know what? You just answered my last question, which was going to be the 4-day work week. Always appreciate it, man. Always great stuff. Joel Patterson, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.